Hi everyone. This is my second day of TIFF 2014. It was the second day I went to see a movie. So I'm gonna take a look back at that for you right now. So the movie I saw today was called The Song of the Sea. It's directed by Tom Moore, who directed The Secret of he directed The Secret of Kells, which is an animated film that is nominated for an Oscar and is on the top of so many top 10 lists, and is so well deserved for being there. It's a masterpiece, and I could tell by the trailer that this film was going to be something in a similar vein with that distinct cartoon Saloon style that they've developed, and with the very vivid textures and the iconography all kind of worked into the backgrounds. And yeah, that was very much the case. This film it's an animated storybook, pretty much. It's a visually, there's nothing like it. There's nothing else that looks like the work they produce. And it's just a real treat to see that. So let's talk about the film itself. So it's the story of basically a young boy. He lives on a lighthouse he lives in a lighthouse. His dad's like a lighthouse keeper on this secluded island, and he lives there with his father and his mother. His mother's about to have a baby, and it begins with her. She's about to have a baby, and they're tucking him in to bed, and eventually he's falling asleep. You see his eyes closing, and the frame is closing with his eyes, and then his eyes open, and he sees his mother standing in the doorway saying, "I'm sorry," and she disappears. And you cut to, a few years later, and he's a young boy now, and he has a little sister who doesn't talk, and the mother is just gone, vanished. Basically, they get taken away from their home pretty early in the picture. Something happens. Their grandmother doesn't like them living on this lighthouse. It's secluded. It's no good for the children. So she ends up taking them away. But they miss their home, and there starts to be a supernatural reason why they have to get back to their home. So it becomes a quest for them, and they kind of go over through the Irish countryside, and they end up meeting these magical creatures along the way, and there is a purpose to it. It's not episodic. It is a journey story. It is an Odyssey story, but they're trying to get home, and on their way they meet these magical creatures, and it's actually worked in very well because the story begins. The mother is telling Ben when he's a little boy all of these Irish folklore stories, and singing songs to him in Gaelic, or Gaelic as the Scots would say, and singing these songs and telling these stories. And when Ben grows up a little, he tells the same stories to his younger sister. And the characters in these stories, they come back and they play a role in some way or another, sometimes in bigger ways than others, and it's interesting to see where. So basically, it's the story of them trying to get back home through, a real world, but also a world that's intermingled with mythology and folklore. This film is exactly what it needs to be. It was presented with as part of TIFF Kids, but I do think it's an all ages kind of film. I enjoyed it just because I like cartoons and I like animation, and of course I do. But I feel like anybody could really watch this. I could see there were families there watching it with their young kids, and parents were laughing along with their kids when there were jokes and things like that. Because like a Pixar film, it is that kind of thing where it's a story that's a little bit deeper, and kids could obviously watch it and enjoy it, but there's deeper levels there. There is a bit more for adults, and there are some really nice moments too where they'll do the like again, I don't want to talk about it without spoiling it, but little things will happen when certain characters arrive or arise, and some of the timing of these moments is just right. Certain things will happen at just the right moment, that will call back to something earlier and kind of let you feel something a little deeper. And it is talking about a cultural tradition and a heritage that I don't think kids would necessarily get right away or appreciate, but I think as an adult you would have kind of a better appreciation for what's going on. So yeah, that's why I'd say it is a family film, and you can enjoy it on many levels. It is funny. There's a lot of funny moments. The animation it's beautiful. The design style, it's that same cartoon Saloon design style where all the characters have the blocky square like fingers, and they're very rounded, and they've got these round eyes, and it can be very cute looking, but at the same time there's these rigid lines, and almost looks like what a lot of television animation is trying to do in terms of design. But in terms of size and scope and the actual effects of their animation, it's not. It's not at all. It's feature quality all the way. Just to make that really, really clear, it has parallels between what a lot of people are doing these days in design with television animation with that specific design style, but the animation itself and the backgrounds and the production design, all feature quality, all top notch. Yeah, let's talk a little about the backgrounds because they're a big part in any cartoon Saloon film. If you've seen the trailer for this film, you'll know it starts with the family's on the bed and on this circular bed, and the mother's singing to the child, and it zooms out and it becomes like this mandala, or this kind of oval shape with these different images growing out of the side, and this simple zoom out becomes a picture, and it only holds on it for a very short time. You'll find a lot of times in this film, if you appreciate design at all, that there will be shots in it where you're like, oh, I wish it would stay on this shot just a little bit longer, or you'll find yourself just kind of looking here, looking there on the screen, looking all over the place because so much detail goes into these things. And it's the kind of things where, I mean, if they were just well composed backgrounds, that would be something in and of itself. They are. Tom Moore said they were watercolors that were then kind of digitally enhanced or tweaked in the computer. Yeah, I couldn't tell it was watercolor. It just looked like amazing. I just assumed it was all done on a computer, but whatever their process was, it's amazing with all of these designs. Yeah, and if it was just a well-made landscape, that would be something in and of itself. But there's so many little design elements. Like you'll see, there'll be these stones that are supposed to be fairies that are petrified, turned to stone, and they've got writing all over them and these symbols all over them, and that keeps reappearing throughout the film. And just the way certain trees will curl and stuff like that. They'll be walking over a hill, and underneath the hill you'll see it's almost a cutaway, and you'll see badgers sleeping in a den underneath it. Like in their burrow, even though the scene is taking on place on top of the hill, you still get that full scope. You see a character climbing out of, they've been in the thick part of a forest or a cave or a tree, and they're climbing out of this hole through a tree, and you see all the root systems go deep underneath the ground. And it very much makes these characters feel like they're part of this kind of, it really does look like the pages of a really well-designed storybook. I mean, that's the best way I can think of putting it. Like, these characters are moving, but they're moving through these amazing-looking pictures. It's just top-notch design all the way. And, of course, the animation is great, so everything about this film is just beautiful. It's just a beautiful-looking film. But, what good is a good-looking film if it doesn't have an engaging story and characters and stuff like that? And it does. It tells a good story, and you know what? It keeps a really good pace. there's really smart bits. It keeps tying in characters and elements from the mythological world to the real world. So people that Ben knows in the real world will kind of be echoed in another character. Or a moment that was relevant to Ben at some point will somehow organically be echoed back through the mythological world. And kind of keeps going in and out of this. There are long stretches where he'll be more in a mythological world, but you know, fairies will come and they'll run in. It's Halloween when this movie takes place. So fairies will run in disguise and they'll do something, and then Ben ends up following them with his sister, and then they end up in the fairy world, and then they travel across the Irish countryside for a bit, walk in the woods, and then they come across some more mythological elements. I really like that. I really like the fact that it's not like some kind of clear cut, here's our mythology and our folklore and here's our reality. It's kind of mixed, and I think that's kind of the point of this. It's the point of all of these films, really, is that, you know, there's such a love for, and just kind of the idea that the land is so tied to its mythology. And I think that's what Tom Moore said was his inspiration for writing this piece. He said that when we lose our mythology, we lose important values that are real and tangible. And I think that comes across. Maybe not in those precise words, maybe not to everybody, but it does come across how important this is, at least to the filmmakers, and in a way that makes it important to us as viewers, because it's presented in such a nice way that we then hear these stories and get to appreciate the mythology. And isn't that what film is supposed to do? Take stories from somewhere that maybe have nothing to do with you and make them relatable. And if that's the case, this film succeeds flying colors. Things I didn't like about the film, I may have to nitpick a little here, quite honestly. I'm struggling. I'm struggling to find things I didn't like. There was something. Oh yeah, the character Ben. He's a bit of a jerk in the beginning. I'll say this is our protagonist, Ben. He's a bit of a jerk, and you get why, because you know his sister comes into the world and his mother goes away or disappears. You don't quite know what happens to her in the beginning, but you get that he kind of feels like his sister kind of took his mother away. So he kind of treats her like crap. You know, he makes fun of her for not talking. He's like, she doesn't talk and stuff, and she's having a birthday party, and like he smashes her face in the cake kind of thing. Some of these things you could chalk up to just being like an older brother just kind of teasing or playing with their sister or whatever, but there's just one or two lines where it's like, that's a little cruel, you know. And it's like there will be moments where it's like and certainly by the end of the film he really does care for his sister. It's not like the stakes are raised, and you know there's something at the end that may be keeping them apart. And you can tell that this loss would be significant to Ben. It would be very significant. It's not just like, well, what does it matter if you two were kept apart? You never really cared about her that much to begin with. No, he grows to love her. And that is an important part of the story, that he grows to love her. But, I don't know, it comes across as a little mean, I guess. He comes across as a bit of a jerk. And, I don't know, I guess it's just something we've seen too much before. It's not that it's out of place here. It totally makes sense in context, but we've done it a lot before. And he does eventually get around to saying, you know, it's not your fault that you know our mom went away. It's not your fault. He does eventually say that. But it's the kind of thing where, like, I've seen that scenario so many times that when I see him treating his sister like that, it's like, okay, they're gonna get around to that eventually. That's kind of gonna be the point of it. And I don't know. I kind of feel like it's a lesson that is really stupid for people to have to learn. I apologize if you've been in that situation because, like, I've never. I mean, obviously, I have nothing to compare that to. And I'm sure legitimately people do feel that way and they can't control feeling that way. But I don't know. Just in a cinematic context, it's usually dealt with as. Um, oh, you took away whoever so and so I who I loved, and then they get to know the person, and then it's like, oh, it wasn't your fault, kind of thing. It's like, I don't know, maybe you should have gotten to know the person before that, before making those judgments. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. It's weird. It's not even a problem really narratively, rather than just something I don't like. And again, because it's been used so many times before. Uh, Again, that said, I don't really know what you would put in that place. It would be interesting to like see Ben act out in a different way because of losing his mother. Maybe because of that happening. They did it well actually in Finding Nemo. The mother dies, and it's not like it's not like the father blames Nemo. It's like, no, it's like, I've lost everything except my one son. I have to be really protective of my son now. That was really nice. It was really nice to see that, because it's like going in the opposite direction from I don't care about you at all to I care about you too much. So something a little more original like that would have been nice if, or like maybe he would like try to relate to his sister but couldn't, or something like that, just because of this gap, because maybe in the back of his mind maybe he doesn't even want to acknowledge it, but you're the reason my mom died. I get that. That's a very human thing. It's a hard thing to do, though. It's a hard thing to try to convey that. And I think what they did works. I just would have liked to seen something a little more original with this one tiny aspect of the film. I don't know. Was there anything else I didn't like? I don't know. Sometimes when the other movie had this problem too. When you have kids singing, you know, make sure you get kids that can really sing. Because even if you can get kids that can sort of sing in a film, it's just the young voice with, if it's off a bit, it's kind of like I'm sitting here listening to kids singing. That happened a bit, but not really. In the film. Generally, it wasn't a problem. Again, I'm scraping the bottom here. I don't know. There's nothing else I can think of. The pacing was fine. Everything looked beautiful. The voice casting was great. Even the villain of the movie, they made the villain they made the villain absolutely sympathetic, actually. You can see where the villains come from. You can see where the villain does what they do. The villain actually repents at the end and is, not verbally, but they basically forgive the villain and she helps them. And even when they first meet the villain doesn't seem evil at all. They're talking to her and she's like, well, I'm just trying to help people. And you completely realize that she says this and she believes what she's saying. And she kind of makes a point. It's a point that's been made in like Star Trek films about pain and taking pain away. And if you could remove your pain, would you? That kind of thing. And even though most people generally come to the same conclusion about that, it's not necessarily, I don't think everybody's circumstance is different. Like, I wonder what everybody would choose, so it's interesting. Again, there are interesting thoughts here for adults. So yeah, even the villain was three-dimensional and sympathetic, and and is built up too. Like, they built, like, you don't even see it coming. She's just kind of, again, with these mythological stories, it's mentioned before as like, oh, I'm telling my sister a bedtime story, and then, okay, we're facing this villain who I've built up to you as like this evil, scary thing. It was just great. It was greatly worked in. I'm trying to find things to knock on this film, and I end up just complimenting it more. I guess in summation, of the two cultural folklore fairy tale films I've seen that have been animated and that I saw at the film festival this year within the last 2 days, this one by miles and miles and miles wins. I was never bored during this film. Not once. It keeps up a good pace. It tells a simple but well executed story. There's deeper levels there for the adults. I like learning about this history and this folklore where the other one didn't even try to teach you the folklore, just kind of threw you in and forgot to mention certain elements. Everything's built up in this film. Everything has a nice payoff. There's deeper levels there that, I didn't even notice some of them until actually Tom Moore had to mention some of them, and then I was like, oh yeah, that did happen. The characters are fun. You have like the best animated dog I've seen in recent years. Like, this is like, I don't know, just everything about it. The design, the aesthetic, the animation, the storytelling. It's all there, and it's all great. At the end of the day, I think, gun to my head, I would have to say that The Secret of Kells is a better film. But, I mean, that's not even an insult in and of itself. To say that somebody's film is not as good as Secret of Kells, it's still comparable. And I think that's what I look for when I see a film by a director who's done great work, like The Secret of Kells or Grave of the Fireflies. I don't necessarily expect the film to be as good as that, because sometimes you capture lightning in a bottle and everything just works, and then you have this wonderful achievement. I get that. That's really, really hard to replicate, even when all your passion and your craftsmanship, and when you have even a bigger budget, sometimes it's hard, if not impossible, to replicate that. And I'm sure every director on the planet worth their salt tries to do that. But, I mean, you want to produce something that you can at least compare to the original and say, yeah, these two films together, yeah, they're very representative of what this director, these artists, this group of people are capable of. And that's what you really want. And certainly in terms of storytelling, in terms of aesthetic, in terms of animation quality, in terms of bringing to life the source material, it's something that obviously this group of artists really have a passion for, and that comes across in the film too. And I would definitely say that this is a film that is comparable to Kells, and that I think is the biggest compliment I can give it, because that's on so many top 10 lists, completely deserves to be there. This may not be as good a film, but I mean, it's not a disappointment in any respect either. It was great. I'm so glad I saw this film. And go see it if you have a chance, if it comes to your local cinema. I don't know if it's been picked up or if it's going to have a broader release, but yeah, I don't know. I think maybe an Oscar season or two down the road, you'll hear the name mentioned at least, and then you can go see it then. Because people will be paying attention. They should be paying attention already. Again, it could already be picked up by somebody. I have no idea. Also, it's region specific, so it releases some places, not others. But yeah, go see this film if you have the chance. If you're at the film festival, I don't know if it has any more showings or what the deal is. I haven't looked on the schedule, but I mean, if you can go see it, if you can get a ticket, I mean, do it. It's well worth your time. You'll definitely be entertained. It's a great film. Take your kids. I can't say enough good things about it. It's just a lovely film.